The Ancestral Cook's Bible, Nourishing Traditions by Sally Fallon-Morell. We love this book and we've cooked so much from it. In this episode, you'll hear which 6 recipes from the hundreds filling its pages are our absolute favourites. We'll share with you why we love them, give you tips about the ingredients and processes, and talk about how we've used them to feed our families and friends and made them our own. Our 6 go-to dishes include 2 breakfasts, 2 mains, a dessert and a vegetable ferment, and hail from all over the globe. Whether you have a copy of the book yet or not, listen in and you'll leave totally inspired to make these delicious, nutritious dishes part of your own kitchen and life. Welcome to the Ancestral Kitchen podcast with Alison, a European town dweller in central Italy, and Andrea, living on a newly created family farm in northwest Washington State, USA. Pull up a chair at the table and join us as we talk about eating, cooking, and living with ancient ancestral food wisdom in a modern world kitchen.
Good afternoon, Alison.
Hello. Good afternoon, good morning.
Yeah, all the things. It is so cold over here. We're recording this a little ahead of posting it, but my recording is happening in May. That's our coldest spring on record. So It's
Wow.
cold.
It's warm here.
Yeah. Man, I can't wait till we have that warmness. Well, I'm super excited for today because it may be cold outside, but our kitchens are warm. It's a
Indeed,
good
they
place to
are.
be.
Yes.
So let me know what you had for lunch, because I haven't had breakfast yet and I'm hungry.
Oh, I'm going to make you hungry. I
Yeah, you are.
had, I seem to talk about lentils a lot when we get to this bit. I have my normal lentils,
Yeah,
which are cooked up in bulk with lard, onion, garlic, ginger, nigella seeds. I can't remember what else I threw in there. And some stock. They were in the fridge, so I got a portion of those out. Then I had them with oats. I've been making occasionally some milk out of whole oat groats. And once I've made the milk, I've got what's left of the oat groats left behind. So I cook those in stock, and they are, you know what porridge is like when it's good, really creamy, beautiful. I had those alongside the lentils, and then some broccoli. And I've taken to frying the broccoli in lard because often we do a big bunch and I give some to Gable for his lunch the next day, and he prefers it like that as opposed to just cold when it's been boiled. It's not as interesting. So I fried it in lard with some onion and some garlic and some sumac on it. And those 3 things together in a big sort of bowl were my lunch, and I sat outside. It was really nice.
Nice. That sounds
How
good.
about you? You said you haven't eaten.
Yeah.
So that made you hungry.
I haven't eaten yet. So I'll be having scrambled eggs. And
Okay.
I was telling you before we started recording that it's interesting having a flock of birds and watching the ebb and flow of the eggs. So we have a couple different heritage breeds. And I should say, I'm not opposed to non-heritage breeds. I don't want people to think that I've got like a, like a cultish obsession with being heritage only. Heritage breeds just tend to be really good for farmers like me that don't have, like antibiotics and things like that because they're bred to live without them. So anyway, I mean, there's other breeds that are as well, more modern breeds, but I don't have those yet. So anyway, heritage birds don't lay every single day like a lot of the big commercial egg laying birds do. So you can actually sort of see their dynamic cycle. And did you know humans are also more fertile in the spring?
No,
just
I didn't
like
know that.
Animals. I did not.
Wow.
I did not know this.
Gosh.
No, women are more fertile in the spring. Like, who knew? Okay, whatever. Weird. But the birds are as well, and they lay like a massive amount of eggs early on, and then we let some of our birds go broody because we like perpetuate our own flock from our own
Right.
birds. And so then we see another drop in the egg production because they lay a clutch and then they sit, right? So they're not laying anymore.
Yeah, I see.
So you kind of got to decide how many birds you want to let sit because, you won't be getting eggs from them. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's so interesting just seeing the ebb and flow.
So how many eggs are you getting at the moment every day?
Oh, I don't know. Last month we got about 1,200 eggs. So
Gosh.
yeah. So I expect this month it will drop a little bit.
Okay, well, still enough to have scrambled eggs for breakfast when we finish recording.
Yeah, we'll make it happen. We'll eke it out. So
Nice.
other exciting news, though, more exciting than the fact that I haven't eaten
Yes.
breakfast. You and I have been doing a lot of work on our Patreon, which to
Mm.
me is super exciting. So we we have had such a great response from you guys, the listeners, not only with joining Patreon, but also messaging us and keeping us updated on how things are going in your own kitchen. And
Mhm.
Alison and I have just found the longer we're doing this, the more opportunities for collaboration and really cool projects kind of come up to us. And so we wanted to create more Patreon sponsorship levels for the podcast because that just expands our capability to do even more and throw even more work at Rob
Yeah.
and even bring in other people to help us work as well, just to give us
Yeah.
more time to do more creative collaborations and more just incredible work expanding the message and education around ancestral food. So, do you want to talk about that for a minute, Alison?
Yeah, no, I'm really excited about it, just as excited as you are, because
I know, I know, it's
we
so
had
cool.
our really faithful patrons, and that's
Mhm.
helped us
Oh yes.
to enable Rob to do some mixing for us. But it feels like the podcast has expanded so much, and
Hmm.
I mean, when you start any new project, you don't really know how it's going to go. And it's gone really well.
Right.
And we've had so much, like you said, so much feedback and so many people contacting us that it really feels like it would be great to take it to another level
Hmm.
now and have people come sponsor us at whatever they feel they can and receive benefits back from us. All the things that we love creating, we'll just create more of them and give them
Yeah.
to you and allow us the capability to think, okay, well, we can do something bigger with this now. We can hear what everyone's saying to us and we can take that and we can create more, something bigger than the podcast, bring people together and allow further access to the important work that is ancestral food in the kitchen, from an environmental standpoint, from a
Hmm.
health standpoint, from a community standpoint. It would be fabulous to realise the things that we're imagining right now, and it's also fabulous to have patrons around us to have that community and support and to feel like we might be far away geographically, but we are not far away spiritually.
Hmm.
We're a
Hmm.
community and we're growing together. And so yeah, do head over to patreon.com Ancestral Kitchen Podcast. So patreon.com, / Ancestral Kitchen Podcast, and have a look at the levels that we've created and what we really want to build and share through there, and see whether it's something that you'd like to come and be part of. Because yeah,
Absolutely.
I love seeing new
The
patrons come on.
Yeah, it's so exciting. And I I wish I could give you guys a glimpse inside of Allison's mind. The things she
I
tells
don't want to
me,
see
the
that.
the ideas that she's and she didn't just come up with these ideas that she's had for a long time. And
Mm.
and she's starting to have the infrastructure in place to start developing things. And so if you guys could just see what's in her mind, you'd be like, what is going on? There's so many great ideas in Allison's head. And we just gotta help make them happen, you guys. That's all I'm
Oh,
here to do.
that's very kind. That's very
It's
kind. I
amazing.
think a lot of people have talked about the dynamic between you and I, and not just geographically the dynamic, because you're in the States and I'm in Europe, and that gives us very
Right.
different mindsets. But I also think there's a nice dynamic between us in that you keep me grounded sometimes when I become too organised with all my projects all over the place, and I'm trying to put them in some sort of structure and order. And it feels really good to be creating this together and to bring on patrons and make it something that we're creating together as a community, because we all believe in the same thing and we all love the same thing. We all want to see the same thing in the world. That makes it so much bigger than just me here in my kitchen. And that's what I really want to see. That's the thing that fires up any idea that I have, for sure.
Yeah. And it feels like the right time. I was thinking about this yesterday too, that we're standing on the shoulders of a lot of great people, Joel Salatin, Sally Fallon, Sandra Katz. They've been really putting the work in for decades.
Yeah.
And
Incredible work.
We can stand on their shoulders and start to get some really practical things into people's hands, which is super powerful. And yeah, the community has been a great aspect of it, because sometimes it does feel sort of like you're the only weirdo out there, in the kitchen fermenting your oatmeal or something. And people ask me all the time if I've met you, Alison, and they're always really surprised when I say, no, we've never met in person.
No. It feels like we have, but we haven't.
It does. And that's how it feels with, you guys know, those of you who are already patrons, that like like, what? I've never met Aaron. That's so weird. It doesn't even seem right. But yeah, it's true.
Maybe one day we'll have a big ancestral kitchen conference somewhere.
Oh yeah.
And then we'll
Okay,
have
you guys just got like a little snippet of how Alison's mind works. She's there already.
I would love that. Anyway, let's get back to the books that are the book that's in front of me now on today's episode, shall we?
Yeah. Okay, yeah, guys, just go check out the Patreon feed. We'll put the link in the show notes, and I think some of the stuff that we put on there might surprise you a little bit. So
yeah,
let us know. Yeah. All right, where to begin? Nourishing Traditions.
So we've already done one episode on Nourishing Traditions. If you haven't listened to that already, you don't know what the book is, you even want more Nourishing Traditions, even though you know what the book is, go back and check out our previous episode on Nourishing Traditions, the Ancestral cookbook. We love this book so much that we did say at the end of that episode that we would do more episodes on it, and this is going to be one of them, in that both Andrea and I will be digging into 3 of our most favourite recipes in Nourishing Traditions. So if you have a copy of the book, which I know a lot of people did buy one after the previous episode, go grab it, press pause, go grab it and bring it over, and you can follow along with us as we share with you some of the recipes that are staples in our own kitchens.
Yeah, just turn the page when you hear the sound of the lard hitting the pan.
Yeah, make a sound.
Now that's a book I'd listen to.
Okay, who's starting, Andrea? Do you want to tell us about one of your choices?
I was going to say you should start.
Okay, I'll start with a simple one then. So one of the recipes from Nourishing Traditions that I've chosen is a fermentation recipe. And I think when I first got Nourishing Traditions, I was coming out of eating raw vegan. And the thing that inspired me the most when I started learning about ancestral food and ancestral eating was the fermentation and the fermentation kind of techniques. And there's a fabulous section right at the beginning of Nourishing Traditions on fermented vegetables and fruits. And there are hundreds of recipes in there of different ferments you can do. And the one that I've picked as my favourite is ginger carrots. Now, we do make sauerkraut. I mean, we have sauerkraut every single day. I didn't say in my lunch summary that I had sauerkraut with my lunch, because I do every day. But I kind of see it as a staple, and it's just there all the time. Whereas other vegetable ferments, I kind of bring in for variation and I add on top of it. And the ginger carrots have such a fabulous taste, and they're such a wonderful recipe to bring to people who haven't fermented before, because the sweetness of the carrots and the zinginess of the ginger in them really just pleases so many people's palates. And it's a really simple thing to do. You know, you're just grating the carrots and you're grating fresh ginger, and then you're mixing in a brine with them. The recipe, which is on page 95, I should have told you that earlier, is includes whey. And I think when I originally made it, like a decade ago, or more than a decade ago, when I got this book, I probably would have put whey in it. But since then, most of my vegetable fermenting I do with just a salt brine, not with whey. So there are instructions that Sally's put in there to say, you know, use whey if you want to, but if you can't, add an additional tablespoon of salt. So literally, you just grate the carrots, grate the ginger, make the brine, mix it together. Make sure that all the carrots are under the liquid when you ferment. That's very important when fermenting any form of vegetable, that the vegetable matter stays under the liquid. So just top the jar up if you need to, and then you leave it. When I make the brine for it, I usually do 5 grams of salt to a cup of water, and then pour that over the top. I use glass weights, to keep the carrots down. Sometimes I'll put a layer of cabbage over the top just to stop any straggly bits of grated carrot coming up the side of the jars. And unlike a lot of other vegetable ferments, I prefer to eat this one quite fresh. So I find it has a tendency to go slimy if you leave it for longer, and there's not really any taste benefits from leaving it longer. And actually, contrary to popular belief, there's not really a great deal of health benefits in studies from leaving vegetable ferments for extended periods of time. So usually I will leave the ginger carrots for 3, 4, possibly even 5 days. Sally does say 3 days before putting them in cold storage. And I think some people have contacted me about this recipe and said, oh, I can't make this without it going slimy. And that would be something I would say, make sure that you don't ferment it for long. It just doesn't need it. And then it's a wonderful side dish to have with a main meal, to have with cheeses, to have with anything that needs a bit of zing. You can put it on top of foods that you're eating. I absolutely love them. And I think they're a great kind of introduction to fermented vegetables, an introduction to fermented foods that you can put in front of guests that you have and give them a spoonful and then start talking to them about it, which is another reason why I love it.
It's such an easy recipe, like you said. And I've also done it with, there was a farmer by our old house, just a little organic farm, a couple acres, and he would sell his like buggy carrots, like the small carrots that the bugs had kind of got to, and he said nobody really wants them, so he's selling them for really cheap, and I just buy entire like grocery bags of them. And me and the kids would just trim them up and make sure we got any bugs out, and then basically fill half-gallon jars with those carrots, so they're almost like whole. And those we would keep for, actually I think I have a quart still in my fridge that's probably like 2 years old, but I'm gonna probably just chuck it to the chickens. But I would say after 8 months in the fridge, those whole carrots start to get that sliminess to them.
So that's the difference, because they're not grated. You've kept them whole.
Yeah, they last a lot longer. And we just did like 3 days on the counter and then popped into the fridge, so they kind of kept chilled this whole time. But yeah, grated is nice because you can put it on, like, if you make like sausages and buns or sandwiches, you can even like mix it into mayo or
I think I didn't say that I don't generally peel my carrots. We buy our carrots from a local veg supplier who doesn't use pesticides, so I'm very happy with the carrots that we get. So if they're dirty, then I will kind of scrub them. But apart from that, I don't peel them. I think that a lot of the vegetables have more goodies on the outside of them, which helps with the fermentation. So if you can avoid having to peel the carrots before you do it, then go ahead. That would be best, I think.
This is where I don't know if this is also in the UK and in Europe, but in America, and I was talking to Rebecca from A Humble Place yesterday. We were chatting about this, and we were talking about the Crisco and everything like that,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
and how they're so obsessed with sanitation at that time period. And so I was telling her, you know, for us now, is that the water we're swimming in? This obsession with sanitation and purifying and things being really clean and boiling and scrubbing and soaping and everything. And what's
Mm,
interesting is when you come to fermentation, you do want your utensils and things to be clean, but an obsession with sanitation will actually decrease
yeah.
your quality of ferments. If you're trying to peel and scrub and um, make sure there's not one speck of dirt on your food and things like that,
Mm,
then you'll actually have a poorer result.
yeah, I agree. I agree. So yeah, try not to peel. So yeah, that's my
Yeah,
first choice. Ginger carrot, simple, but just an absolute favourite here, and such a nice thing to share.
that's a great one. I
What
love
have you
it.
got for us?
Okay, so I'm actually just going to jump back a few pages to 88.
Okay. Okay, I'm turning
And
the page.
I feel like we're preaching sermons out of our Bible. Turn with me to page 88. Okay. The cultured milk smoothie. This is one of the very first things I made out of this book.
Hmm.
Um, I absolutely love this. Postpartum with my first, this was my great discovery, was this beverage. So it's just a very simple smoothie. Somebody told me the name sounds gross, cultured milk smoothie, and I
Hmm.
doesn't sound gross to me. I don't know
No.
why. I don't know what they were thinking, but anyways, Sally gives you basically two options in here. She has her banana version or her berry version.
Hmm.
I have genuinely tried to decide which one I like better. I'm like, you know what? This is the one. And then the next day I'm like, I was wrong. This is the one.
Mm,
I really can't decide which one I prefer. Um, and of course you can make any variation you want to, but it's a whole milk, buttermilk, kefir, or yogurt. So any cultured milk that you have on
yeah.
hand. Um, a ripe banana or a cup of berries, fresh or frozen. That tends to be the one I make, the berry one, just because we
Okay.
don't often have bananas on hand.
Yeah.
Um, coconut oil, egg yolks, maple syrup or stevia powder, and honestly, with the fruit in there, you could leave that out if
Yeah.
you wanted. Vanilla extract and nutmeg for the banana version. She just adds a
Yeah.
little seasoning to that. So yeah, just throw it all in the smoothie. And I've also tried tossing in a handful of spinach sometimes. That can be good.
Hmm.
I mean, I don't know, you could do all kinds of different things. It's a smoothie.
You could
But
put some
what I love
cocoa in it.
about
I
it,
imagine with the banana, put a
yeah,
spoonful of cocoa powder in. That would be lovely.
yeah, yeah. What I love about this
Mm.
recipe was that Um, I always said it was one of the meals I can make with one hand. So,
Yeah.
when you have a newborn baby, sometimes you're like, what can I eat? And this was something that I could prepare with one hand with the baby in the other arm. And then I could even wash the container, rinse out the mixer, put hot water and soap in it, put it back on the stand, mix it
Yeah.
again. It was just a really, really simple thing. And my kids love it too. Sometimes I would make it, not finish it, put it in the fridge, have it later, just shake it up if it separates. Um, it was just
That's
a
a
very
great thing for
handy,
breakfast for kiddies, I can imagine, because it's
so good.
fun.
So
They've
good.
got the smoothie, it's thick, it's sweet, it's
Oh yeah.
fruity, and, they can make a big moustache on their top lip with it,
Yeah,
drinking it.
exactly.
And
Exactly.
it's, I imagine, and I see a lot of questions from people who want breakfast ideas for little ones. And
Oh,
as part of
yeah.
a variety, obviously some days you could do something else. You could do oatmeal, you could do different things. But to have this
Mhm.
in the kind of catalogue of breakfasts that you could make, it seems like an obvious choice to me for a breakfast drink for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, and if you wanted to make it really extra proteiny or whatever, you could take some of the next recipe I'm going to share, which is a fermented oat, and you could put some of those in there cold, like your fermented oats left over, and mix those
Ah,
in.
Yeah, and I'm thinking you could also put collagen powder in if you wanted to
Oh yeah.
add some extra
Oh
zingy
yeah.
protein into it. And maybe even some nuts. If you soak your nuts overnight,
Oh,
you could throw
totally.
some nuts in there
Yeah.
as well, because they'd be soft, and so they would blend up really nicely.
Yeah, I've tried doing like a tiny amount of soaked chia seeds. You
Or
don't want to do a lot
linseed.
of that, but just yeah, your favorite.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you can make it sweet with the fruit or not. You don't you don't have to put fruit in it if you're just not into that. Um, so
Do
it's just a
you
great foundation.
make yours with kefir, or have you used buttermilk and
Usually,
yogurt
yeah,
instead? You usually use kefir.
yeah. I think I've done all the options at various times, but kefir tends to be my favorite cultured milk just because it's really easy to make and I can have jars and jars and jars of it on hand all the time and it's convenient. So,
And you could put some of your new cow's cream in it. Oh, the Jersey cream.
ah,
That would be lovely.
yeah, totally. All right. What else do you
Wonderful.
have, Alison? What's
Okay,
your
let
next
me
one?
go back to my list. My next one, we need to turn to page 464, right towards the end.
All right.
So,
All our shuffling pages.
yeah, there we go. Kasha. So there's actually a whole 2 pages dedicated to Kasha in Nourishing Traditions, 464 and 465, with various different recipes. And Kasha is the etymology, I think it's originally a Russian word that means porridge. And it's come to kind of refer to buckwheat, which is a grain that has a long, long history in Russia and areas around Russia. And this is a gluten-free recipe, which I particularly like. We haven't had it so much recently because it's not lectin-free. So buckwheat isn't lectin-free, but it is gluten-free. Confusing because the name has the word wheat in it, but it's not a wheat at all. It's not actually a grain. It's a seed. And buckwheat is a relative of the rhubarb. So it's in the same family as rhubarb, which is interesting. And I started making this as one of the first recipes I made from this book when I bought it. And the second recipe on page 464, the Russian Kasha, is absolutely delicious. And the reason I like it so much is because it's simple to make, and yet it is so rich because you use chicken stock, because you use butter, and because you use an egg. And there's something magic about putting those things in with a warm grain. I think it's like when you have a porridge and you put cream in it and you put egg in it. It's food for the soul, like on a really deep level. And the way that Sally kind of lays this out on this page with these 4 recipes is that the kasha, the Russian kasha, and the kasha nut loaf are all made with buckwheat groats that have been previously soaked and then kind of sprouted a little bit and then dehydrated. Whereas the kasha casserole at the top of page 465, she uses buckwheat groats that haven't been treated like that. And in that case, she soaks them in an acidic medium like we know, with other grains, to kind of treat them before we eat them. Sometimes I do that with these kashas. Sometimes I soak them and sprout them and dehydrate them. Sometimes I don't. And I haven't been so strict with buckwheat because I know it's not a gluten grain. And historically, it's a grain that I find easier to digest than some of the gluten grains. In that, the way I know that is that I find, that I'm kind of hungry earlier. My body doesn't take so long to break it down. So sometimes I will make this Russian kasha and I will actually soak the buckwheat previously and then I will bake it to dehydrate it. And if I do that, I do it in bulk. And then I've got a container in the cupboard which has got, like 3-4 kilograms of buckwheat in it that's dehydrated. And as long as it's dehydrated thoroughly, it will last for a really long time. And then I can just bring it out. The thing that then brings the recipe, the Russian kasha recipe to life, aside from all the wonderful ingredients, is the toasting of that dehydrated buckwheat, because I've done this with other grains as well, but when you toast a dry grain, the flavours that are imparted to it bring so much more to the dish that it's finally cooked in than if you hadn't toasted that grain. I guess it's kind of similar to toasting a spice. You bloom a spice or you dry toast a spice. The flavours change. When you cook a bread, the crust of it gets brown and you get those sugars come out and it changes the flavour. I think a similar thing happens when you put buckwheat that's dry and dehydrated, or even if you haven't sprouted it and dehydrated it, you could just do it with the buckwheat straight from the packet. When you put that buckwheat, the groats, into a pan and you toast them, it adds this kind of biscuity, sweet, delicious, toasty flavour to the final dish. And so you prepare your buckwheat like that by dry toasting it, and then you mix in an egg and you put it in the pan and you're kind of mashing it up so the egg's cooking with the dry buckwheat. And once that's been kind of cooked, you pour in your chicken stock, you put your butter in, and then you add seasonings. And Sally just talks about salt and pepper here, but I've put rosemary in, I've put sage in, I've put nigella seeds in, whatever I really feel like. And you cook that buckwheat until the stock has been absorbed. And yeah, I'll just go on about this again. You've got the toasty flavour of the buckwheat, you've got the depth of the egg, you've got the richness of the butter, you've got the salt and the pepper, and then you've got the depth of the chicken stock together. On a cold December evening, to have a bowl of that in your hand steaming, it's just, I can't stop making it. I love it.
Oh, I believe it. And
So yeah.
when you make that first recipe where you're soaking it, and then she says store it in the refrigerator in an airtight container, how long does it, sounds like it doesn't last you very long, but
No.
how long does it last in the refrigerator? Do you know?
I don't keep mine in the refrigerator, and I never have done. I've just maybe I dehydrate mine rather than put it in the oven. And they are really dry when they're dehydrated. Seriously dry. You can feel it. You can feel the weight of them. And I just keep them in a container, an airtight container in the cupboard. And they've been like that for at least a month and absolutely fine.
Oh, wow. Okay, great.
Obviously, Sally is the guru. So if she says put it in the fridge in an airtight container, then probably you should follow her instructions, not mine. But I have put it in the fridge, in the cupboard for a month, and it's been fine as long as it's properly dehydrated. No moisture left in it at all.
Absolutely. Maybe it depends on where you live, if it's very humid. I know she lives in a very humid area of the US, so.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. I haven't made the other two recipes on page 465, the Kasha casserole and the Kasha nut loaf, mainly because I love the Russian Kasha just as it is. I don't think you can beat it. But I like the idea of the nut loaf, with some other extra bits in it, and then cooking it like that. I like the idea of that. So maybe sometime soon I will get to doing that Kasha nut loaf. If you haven't tried buckwheat, it's got a delicious flavour in and of itself, even if it's not toasted. It's a very particular flavour, and it's a lovely, lovely grain. So if it grows near you and you can get hold of some, definitely give this recipe a go, because it's simple and it's delicious. Really delicious.
Yeah, and the nut loaf looks really good, and she's got shredded carrot in there, so I'm thinking you could use your ginger carrots in that.
Oh, yum.
And
That
that
would be
would be
nice.
that's looking pretty good. No, you definitely sold me on this recipe, Alison. I haven't made this yet, but it's going on my list. So,
Yay. Mission
yeah, I gotta do
accomplished.
that one. Yeah.
Okay, let's ping it back to you. You give us one.
All right. Oh, and for anybody in the US who's listening, if you order some of your bulk dry goods from Azure Standard, I know I've mentioned them before, but they sell, you can buy, up to 50-pound bags of buckwheat groats, organic ones from them. for a great price. Grown out here relatively close to me.
I
Okay.
think that it's probably easier to get
Mhm.
buckwheat groats in the States than it is in England, because I remember when we lived in England, we had
Oh,
problem getting local buckwheat. It's not grown in England at all. And a lot of it's
huh.
imported from China to
Really
England. And I kind of
interesting.
don't trust anything that says it's organic that's come from China.
Right, right. Well, we
But
have
it's grown in
I
Europe. It's grown in Italy here. So if you can get hold of some European buckwheat from continental Europe, that is probably more, probably I'd recommend
Mhm.
doing that rather than trying to get the Chinese one, which is in a lot of UK shops. Sorry,
Yeah, I
you were going
don't
to say something.
know the exact history of it in the US, but I know that it is, I mean, I've seen it in recipes going pretty far back in American, like
Hmm.
North American kind of history. So I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know its exact history out here. Okay, well, this is gonna kind of be another grain one here. So,
Mm-hmm.
well, yeah, buckwheat's not a grain. Quinoa's not a grain either, is it?
No,
Isn't
that's the
quinoa a
same
seed
thing. That's
also?
a seed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it kind of gets lumped into the grain category in our mind, which is interesting.
Mm.
All right, so let's jump back again. Page 455. We're sticking pretty close to each other, I noticed,
Mm.
although
Yeah.
we did not choose these and we kind of chose them and talked about them before,
Yeah.
but all right, so this is one that is so easy and simple, and you've made this before, dear listener, I'll bet. You just don't know it. Um, so this is breakfast porridge. And have you ever made oatmeal and you put the oatmeal in the pot, you put water in it, you put it on the stove, you turn it on, you heat it. Okay. So if you're listening and you're like, yeah, I've done that. Okay. So do the same thing. Put the oatmeal in the pot, put in the water, put it on the stove. Don't turn the stove on. Walk away, go to bed, get up the next morning, then turn the stove on. Okay, now you've done it. That's pretty much all there is to it. So you're going to put the oats and water and some kind of acidulator. What does she call those? Some kind of a ferment.
Acidulator. I like
So
that.
yeah,
Acidulificator.
acidulous. Anyways, so some whey or yogurt, kefir or buttermilk. I usually use kefir, like I said before. That's usually what I have on hand. So mix your oats and your water together. She actually mixes the oats with just a portion of the water and then adds the rest of the water the next day.
Mm-hmm.
I like you said, she's the guru. I don't know if there's a specific reason for that. I just mix all the water in at that time the night before,
Yeah, me
um,
too.
just to eliminate a step in the morning. And I literally put it on the stove, on the burner where it's going to cook. And then the next morning I get up and I just shuffle out and flip the switch and turn it on. So
That's
it's very
clever.
nice,
I
fast
like
food.
that.
Yeah. Well, Alison, I'm a clever person, so stand back.
I always put mine in a separate bowl, and I'm trying to think of a very astute reason why I do that now, but I don't
Well,
think
I
there is
did
one.
too. I did too.
Mm.
I put it in a container and put a lid on it. And then just over time, just kept thinking, you do this 150 times in a row and you think, what kind of steps can I eliminate? And
I think
washing
actually I
another
put mine
ditching
in the fridge
spatula.
sometimes. That's why I put mine
Yeah.
in the fridge
Yeah.
sometimes the next day, and I don't cook it. And I'd look a bit. Well, I'd miss a saucepan if one was in my fridge. I don't have that many saucepans.
Yeah. So, um, Sally has about 1,000 variations listed
Yeah.
here. Well, not 1,000, but I told you I'm always exaggerating. No, I'm just kidding. Um, but she has different variations listed, and anybody who's eaten oatmeal knows that there's just no end to anybody who's watched Alison eat porridge knows
Mm.
there's no end to the variations, and they don't all have to be sweet. I know we have a tradition in the US. It seems like a breakfast has to be sweet, which doesn't really make any sense. And your porridge doesn't have to be sweet. However, I will say my kids like it the exact same way every single time, and you know how kids can be sometimes. You change it and they're like, what is this? Why
Yeah.
are you feeding me this? So my kids like it with um maple syrup, cream, or well, not so much cream, but just like whole milk with the cream shaken in, and butter. So that's how they like it.
Traditionally, oatmeal in Scotland was cooked with salt, so it was a savoury, kind of savoury-ish
Yeah.
dish. It wasn't made sweet, and mostly I eat my oatmeal savoury because historically I haven't eaten sweet food, so I've just got used to it savoury, and I love it that way. Anyone who's listened to this podcast before knows I often stir miso into my porridge because I love the flavour, the saltiness and the flavour that miso gives it, and I'll put olive oil in with it sometimes. I think it's really important to add a fat to bring out the flavour and round out the nutrition with it, and she definitely says to do that. And there is something wonderful about butter with porridge. There really is. It's kind of like the butter with the Kasha thing.
It elevates it. It definitely does. I remember one time we did a really fancy fundraiser dinner out on the farm in Virginia, and we made, kind of on a whim, like a sage oat side dish. So it was kind of like a savory side that went alongside these, salty meats and things like that. It was really good.
It
It was
sounds
surprising.
delicious.
We're just like looking around, like, what do we have that we can use? We have sage. We have oatmeal. Voila. I
That sounds
always love
delicious.
this little chunk that she has on the next page, and I think about it every single time I make this oatmeal,
Oh, yeah.
where she says, on page 456, in Scotland, it was the custom to prepare oatmeal in large batches and pour the cooked cereal into a drawer in the kitchen
Yeah.
hutch or dresser. Squares of congealed oatmeal could then be cut out as needed and reheated by adding a little water. This process allowed the oatmeal to ferment a second time. So I don't pour it in the drawer, but sometimes I intentionally make a larger batch of oatmeal and then I pour it into another container, kind of like you said, and I put it in the fridge so that then the next morning I can just cut out a piece and heat it up with some more milk for the kids. So just
Yeah.
depending on what your needs are. All right,
I think
Alison, what do you have next? Huh?
I just want to say I
Sorry.
think that's a great idea because why
Yeah.
cook something twice? Why turn the stove on twice, 3, 4, 5 times? Just make up a big batch. Pour it into a shallow dish, and then you can actually just cut it nicely, and it just it makes complete sense. So yeah, I just wanted to add that. Okay, so my third and final choice is another kind of grainy food. It's on page 510, and Sally titles it Indian style pancakes, but I know it as dosas. And this again is one of the recipes that I've started making very soon after getting this book. And I remember particularly before Gable was born, I made it many, many, many times. And whenever anyone came to eat at our house, I would make them dosas. And it's a very kind of simple thing in that it's double rice to lentils. Usually I use lentils that have had the holes taken off, like red split lentils. And you're doing what you've just done to the porridge, basically soaking them with an acidic medium. That way I don't have to say acidificatorium or whatever it was. And you leave that basically to ferment and to do the processing of the grains and the legumes for you. And then you drain it, and I usually rinse it as well, and then pop it in your food processor and just put a little bit of water in with it while it's going until you get a batter that you're happy with. It looks like a pancake batter. And then you ferment that for 24 hours. So it requires some forethought if you want to make it. You can't just get up in the morning and go, I'm going to make my dosas. You need a few days planning, but there's not actually a lot of work involved. It is literally just pour water over it, leave it, put it in your food processor, put some water in, and then leave it again. And I remember doing this without putting an inoculant in it as well, and it working fine. So she does say whey. She's also got all lemon juice. So, if you're not eating dairy, you can use lemon juice. You could use sourdough. You could use sourdough starter. You could use sauerkraut juice is what I wanted to say first as well. And then once it's fermented and you see the bubbles in it, you start to smell it, you stir it and bubbles will kind of come up. It smells delicious. And then I cook them in the cast iron pan. I use generally ghee to cook these in the cast iron pan because it's traditional fat that would have been used, that is used by people who eat dosas in India. But also because I love the flavour of it with the ghee. And I heat up my cast iron pan until it's hotter than one would imagine. I mean, I leave it quite a long time on a medium heat until I can't hold my hand over the top of it for very long. Pretty much like in the video we did with Charlie when she was cooking pizzas in the cast iron pan in her van a few weeks ago. She said she holds her hand over a cast iron pan. When she can't hold it there anymore, then it's warm enough. And then I'll put my fat in. And really, I mean, I'm just generous with that ghee because it's not very often that I'm going to make the dosas. It's not something I'm doing every night. It's a special meal for us. And so I'm going to use the amount of fat that feels nice to have a special meal. So I put my ghee in, and I've done it with lard as well. And let that melt and then put some of the dough in and some of the batter in. Generally I do it so it fills up my whole cast iron pan, which I think is 8 inches, 20 centimetres. And then leave it to cook for 5 minutes. It's quite thin, so you don't need to leave it to cook for long, and then flip it. If you're worried about flipping something so big, just make yours a bit smaller. Make a smaller circle in your pan. Flip it and cook the other side. And then Sally does say you can keep them warm in the oven, which I have done before. And she says brush pan with butter between each pancake. I just put a bit of extra ghee in. And then I remember, the best way that I've eaten these, and I've done it quite often, is to make some accompaniments to go with it. So I will often have a yogurt-style dip. So that's yogurt and chopped up cucumber and then some mint all mixed in. And then some thinly shredded red onions mixed with, if I've got some fresh coriander and maybe some fresh coriander seeds or just the seeds if I haven't got the fresh. And that's in another little bowl next to it. And often we've eaten it with mango chutney, which I've never made, but is a traditional. If you go to an Indian restaurant in the UK, you will get mango chutney with the kind of the bread things you have there. And it's wonderful to have those things on the table and have a spoon and put them on the dosa and, to eat it in whatever way you want to, whether you want to fold it up, save it until you've got some curry at the side if you're doing curry as well, whether you want to put something in it, some lentils or some fish, some salad. But they're a really fun dish and something that is nutritious as well and has been fermented, so they're easier on your tummy. And the flavour is delicious, and the fat that's in them when you're cooking makes them even nicer. And to show someone, again, if you've got someone coming to share food with you, and for me, I would cook an Indian-style dish with it, like the lentils that I ate for lunch. They're nice to have on the side, or they're nice to have as a starter, and they're fun. They're fun to make, and they're fun to eat and share, and I love them. It's like
They
an ode
sound
to
absolutely
dosas.
delicious.
They
And
are.
I see on her description, I just got to know, Alison, I just got to know. She says you can make the batter even more thin by adding more water, but they're hard to turn without tearing. So I got to know. I know that somewhere along the line you've said to yourself, now how thin can I get these?
Yeah. It depends on how confident you are with your pan. If you had a non-stick pan, there'd be no trouble at all because it wouldn't be sticking at all, and it would slide out of the curved edge. And it just, or if you have a smaller pan, it wouldn't be, you're not being so ambitious and you're going for something that's maybe, 5 inches across rather than 8 inches across. It wouldn't be a problem. it depends how kind of at one with your pan and your oven, your stove and your cooking fat you are to know, it. I've got better over the years flipping these and flipping pancakes because I know what temperature I need my pan to be at. I know how much fat I need to use. I know how long it's going to take. I know which spatula I'm going to use to turn them. And I know how boldly confident I need to be to turn them without it splitting. But generally, I mean, I'd say I'm using my hands now to try and show. Mine aren't that thin. Mine are maybe 3 millimeters thick. Maybe 3 millimeters, less than half a centimetre for definite, maybe like 3 millimeters thick. You could make them down as thin as like, a crepe, 1 millimetre, but they would be harder to turn because they're not like, if you make a crepe out of, for example, buckwheat or one of the other grains that tends to have a good facility to bind together, it's easier to turn those ones because they're more gloopy. Whereas this is lentils and rice. They're not two grains that are going to necessarily stick together very easily.
Right.
So erring on the side of caution, if you don't want them broken or if you've got guests coming, do them a little bit thicker or do them a little bit smaller. And I'd say, probably my average is maybe 2-3 millimeters.
Okay.
So, yeah.
I wonder if ghee is, remember Beatrice talked in one of our very earliest Patreon bonuses where she talked about making the ghee with her mom where she grew up in Kenya.
Yeah.
And then ghee is also traditional in India as well. And I wonder if it's because, so both of those cultures, rely a lot on the cow, the Maasai,
Yeah.
and then also in India, I know different areas. But butter will spoil very quickly if it's kept like warm. But if it's warm and it's separated into clarified butter or ghee, and then you
Yeah.
take out like the milky stuff, then it can actually last at room temperature for a pretty long time. So it's just
Yeah.
interesting thinking about how we have these traditional foods that kind of came about. You have to remember there wasn't refrigerators, there wasn't, preservatives other than, salt or sugar in some cases, and the way the foods they had to fit the way people lived first. The food
Yeah.
had to serve the environment and the
They came from
people.
a need, that ghee came from a
Right,
need
right,
that you can't leave the fat out for long. Oh, look, here's something we can
right.
do. And look, we can leave the fat out
Yeah.
for a long time now. Yeah.
Yeah. So interesting. Just thinking about how all that stuff comes about. Okay.
Yeah, I like the taste of it. I really like the taste of ghee. And
Yeah.
I like the
Yeah.
fact that I can fry at higher heats in it than butter, which is why I use ghee for that dose of frying, because
Totally.
I can get my pan much, much hotter. And, pancakes in a not hot pan is going to be a disaster. So ghee is your ally for sure.
Yeah. Isn't that the truth? Yeah, ghee can be heated. I know you said this on the fat episode, but it's good to just note it can be heated a lot hotter than butter
Yeah.
because you don't have you're not basically caramelizing it at that point without all the milk and it turning into sugar. Okay.
So let's go to your last recipe. I feel like we're on the last one. I can't believe it. We've got to
I
do another
know.
episode.
Look at us. I'm proud of us. Yeah, we should do another one. Hey guys, let us know if you like this. We'll do another one because we could go on. There's more recipes. All right. We're going to jump to page 547. So again, I stayed pretty close to you. This is gingerbread. I absolutely love this recipe. It's so decadent is probably the best way to describe it. And it smells so good when you're making it. It's the one of the few times I've ever been tempted to taste batter. I never really have that urge like, oh, let me lick the spoon or whatever. I never got that. But this just smells so good. So this is a mixture of it's actually the first baked, like not counting sourdough breads. I won't count that. But it was the first time I tried doing a soaked grain.
Okay.
This is one of the very first recipes I made out of the book and has survived as a favorite. So you have your freshly ground flour, which I've used all different kinds of flour you can use. She has spelt, how do you say this, Alison? Kamut?
I say
How do you
kamut, but
say
it's
it?
probably kamut.
Kamut? I have
I
no
say
idea.
kefir, it's probably is kefir, isn't it?
Yeah,
So I'm
nobody
probably wrong.
knows. We all know what we're talking about, so communication is achieved. I've used einkorn. She has whole wheat flour listed here. You could do a mixture of flours, whatever. Buttermilk, kefir, yogurt, butter, grated ginger, rapadura, which is like a dark, coarse cane sugar, or you could use sucanut. Those are just brand names.
Mhm.
Or I've used honey before, or I've also tried it with coconut sugar, kind of whatever strikes your fancy. Molasses, eggs, cinnamon, nutmeg, cloves, ginger, mustard, salt, baking powder.
So before you carry on with the gingerbread, what I wanted to say to listeners is that we're going to put this gingerbread recipe and we're going to put the Kasha recipe onto a document that will be downloadable for patrons. So don't worry about scribbling anything down if you don't have a copy of
Yeah.
Nourishing Traditions. Sally's given us permission to put those two recipes onto a document, and we'll put the recipes and we'll put our own kind of notes and ideas of having cooked them in our kitchens for many, many years, so you can have a read and let those inform you as well. I wanted to say that because I meant to say it earlier and I forgot. So that long list of ingredients will be on our PDF that's downloadable for patrons. I'm surprised to see mustard there. I have never put mustard in gingerbread.
I was surprised too, but I hear and I obey. And it's really good.
Wow.
Think about the dynamic flavor of mustard and ginger with there's sort of that heat situation going on there. I wonder if that's why they're both paired in there. I don't really know, but I thought the same thing. Are you sure about this? But I just did it and it is wonderful.
Wow.
So
Okay.
it's just really a simple recipe. If you've ever made a baked quick bread, it's just same as the oatmeal. Make it, mix your batter together, and then stop and leave it overnight. And then the next day resume work in the kitchen and bake it. That's really all there is to soaking. I mean, before I started trying to soak anything, I just had this idea in my head, okay, what kind of techniques, what do I need to do? What do I need to know? And it's really just the same process you've done your whole life. Just stop before you bake it and let it sit and then bake it. And
Yeah.
this, I definitely want to let people know, watch it as it bakes. It's really dense. Of course, depends on the flour, I suppose, but tends to be pretty dense. And it will bake for roughly an hour, but do not over bake it. Just keep checking on it, because what I found is if you over bake it, it's really dry, kind of
Okay.
intolerable. But if
So
you,
is it thick? She doesn't say how deep it is. What is it? How thick does it come out?
she puts it in a 9 by 13 pan, and that will fill the pan. It'll bake. It doesn't rise real high. It's a kind of
Okay.
flat. It's not really it's not puffed up in the middle like a cake.
Yeah.
But it bakes up to just about the bottom of the rim on a 9 by 13, kind of a standard pan.
Okay.
And I love when we serve this. I actually have some of it upstairs on the counter, so I can't wait to go eat that. I should have that with my egg.
Yeah.
Um, one of my favorite things to do is open a quart of applesauce and heat it on the stove. And a lot of our applesauce that we make is spiced, so we have cinnamon and nutmeg and allspice in our applesauce. But you could mix it also on the stove after you opened it. And so you have hot applesauce. So put your warm gingerbread in a bowl, put some applesauce in the side, and then whip some cream. Don't sweeten the cream, because with the gingerbread is sweet and the applesauce is sweet, it's just too much. But if you don't sweeten the cream, whip it and put some of that on top. Oh my gosh, just
And it
take me
melts.
away. It's so good. It's the perfect combination. All the textures are there, and there's heat there, and there's the fat on the cream. It's pretty stinking good.
Oh, wow. You've sold me on that one for sure.
Yeah.
Gosh.
I know.
Wow.
I know based on the other things you've baked that the guys have loved, that this is definitely something Gabe would love.
Yeah, no, Gabriel would like it.
He would
And
really like this.
looking at it, Gabriel could do most of it. because like you said, you just mix it, then you stop, and then it looks like you just literally pour it into the pan the day later. So it's not an involved process. It's not like the Dosas, He would struggle with the food processor and the cast iron pan and all of that lot. But this, you could make with kids for sure.
Yeah, probably the most involved part of this is shredding the ginger. And shredding ginger is kind of a pain.
Yeah.
But I do heartily recommend shredding the ginger. Don't just think, I'll use powdered ginger instead.
Okay.
No, you have to shred that ginger, because you guys, when you're eating this delicious, warm gingerbread, there's going to be little bursts of ginger throughout it, and it just takes it to a different level.
Yeah. Fresh ginger is amazing. That's why, in the ginger carrots, it's a fabulous thing. It transforms
Oh my gosh,
food.
you can make this a carrot cake and mix your ginger carrots into it. Okay, next up.
Now you're talking. Gingerbread version 2 with carrots.
I have a list. I had typed this up, Alison, a long time ago when we started doing the first Nourishing Traditions episode. So I'm going to put this in a place where the patrons can download it. I'll probably link it in the Patreon feed. But I have a list of recipes, just a couple of recipes that I have loved out of Nourishing Traditions, maybe like 30 or 40 recipes. And then also a list of recipes that I want to try. And those hang in my kitchen, and I just thought maybe they're useful for somebody else. So I'll add those into the document with the
That would be a
recipes.
nicer compliment to kind of just flicking through the book, because it can be a bit overwhelming with its hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages. And so to go through a list and go, oh, Andrea likes these ones. Okay, I'm going to go and have a nose at these. It's that would be a nice thing to do, I think. Thank you.
How many times have I seen somebody post something, or like in a different cookbook, there'll be a recipe, and like the Gaps cookbook by Hilary Boynton, that's such a good book. And she has some recipes in there, and she goes, well, I actually got these out of Nourishing Traditions. And you're like, what? I don't even remember seeing that in there. And I've read the book 3 times. So sometimes just having somebody point something out is really helpful.
Yeah, I agree. Wonderful.
Epic. Anything else?
I can't believe that you are not desperate for your breakfast now after talking about those recipes.
I am, Alison. I am desperate. I'm just a professional, and I'm hiding it really well.
Oh, okay. You move the microphone away from your grumbling tummy.
Yeah. Are you picking that up? Can you hear that? I'm glad I've got the gingerbread. I actually had made a lot of the gingerbread, and I cut it into squares and froze bags of it. So I had just taken a bag of it out the other day. Yeah. I'd taken a bag out just to have like a really nice, fast convenience food. So
lovely. Enjoy.
It'll be easy and quick. Yeah. All right. Well, Alison.
Yeah.
Till next time.
Indeed. Thank you very much, Andrea. Happy cooking.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye. Thank you so much for listening. We'd love to continue the conversation. Come find us on Instagram. Andrea's at Farm and Hearth, and Alison's at Ancestral_kitchen. Until next time, we both wish you much fun, exploration and satisfaction in and out of the kitchen.